Beautiful Tuesday morning here in the city of Lagos. Good morning and welcome to Today in the News here in Vanguard Live. My name is Ololade Adeomi. Let's get started first with the Vanguard newspaper. Major headline on the Vanguard says PDP zones presidency to South, says APC won't play fair. Retains existing zoning arrangement, confirms Damagum national chairman, says APC can't play fair. We did not microzone leadership positions, Governor Diri says. Anyao NWC signed letter to INEC for November convention. Enugu Plateau Taraba governors not defecting to APC, Mohammed says. Zoning presidential tickets to South too late, Wike's aides tells PDP. You can find this story on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Top banner says 5 journalists among 20 killed in Israeli strikes on Gaza hospital. Family, Lagos hospital clash over patients withheld remains, ICU charges. Premium Trust Bank meets 200 billion capital requirement. International syndicate exploits security gaps to steal crude, says NNPCL boss. Ogigwe massacre. Please go after assassins. You can find the story on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. Crisis looms in varsity over salary structure review. Story can be found on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. Ogudu Ifako Bridge. Gridlock persists despite suspension of work. You can find the story on page 10 of the Vanguard newspaper. Sport column says 2026 WCQ. Eagles good enough to beat Rwanda, South Africa, Lawal says. And lastly, State of the Nation Minister Ezenkwesili clash at NBA confab. Protest rocks confab over alleged political imprisonment of Enugu lawmaker. Away from the Vanguard, straight into the Punch newspaper. Major headline on the Punch says Makinde others to fight for PDP ticket. Party zones 2027 ticket to South. Obi may consider PDP return, say obedient. APC insists opposition will lose in 2027. Top banner says external reserves projected to hit $45 billion by year end. Nans vows critical asset shutdown over ASU strike threat. Lower banner says ECOWAS to raise $2.5 billion for 260,000 man counter-terrorism force. And lastly on the Punch, power generation stock at 5,500 MW as Bayelsa gets regulatory authority. Away from the Punch, straight into the Nation newspaper. Major headline on the Nation says PDP knocks out Saraki Bala from 2027 presidential race. Top banner says Ojulari oil theft through pipeline bust altered. Away from the Nation newspaper, straight into the Guardian newspaper. Major headline on the Guardian says 2027 Atiku signals interest as PDP heads for showdown with Tinubu. Lower banner says Tinubu seeks stronger Nigeria-Brazil ties, inks BASA deal. Southwest leads in new voters exercise as Southeast records lowest turnout. Introduces mandatory ethics criminal screening for teachers. That's all we have on the front page of the newspaper. Join us after the break for a quick analysis of some of our top stories. Welcome back. If you just joined us after the break for a quick analysis of some of our top. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is Today in the News here on Vanguard Live. My name is Ololade Adeomi. With me in the Mr. Dayo today.
Good morning, Ololade. Good morning to all our viewers.
So, look into our top story. In a recent National Executive Committee decision, the People's Democratic Party (PDP) has resolved to zone its 2027 presidential ticket to the south, while retaining the national chairman's position in the north. The zoning of the PDP presidential candidate, what does this mean for the party's internal unity?
Well, the PDP is trying to get its act in order. This is all towards 2027, of course. And there's been a lot of internal strife in the PDP. And in the last few years, it's really been struggling to avoid becoming completely comatose. So at this meeting yesterday of the National Executive Council or Committee, they resolved to zone. The tradition has always been that the chairman of a party comes from a different zone from where their presidential candidate comes from. So yesterday, by zoning the presidential ticket to the south, they confirmed the fact that their chairman will come from the north. And they went ahead and confirmed the acting chairman, Damagun. They confirmed him as the substantive chairman yesterday. Now, what does zoning the ticket to the south do for the party? Well, they are learning the lessons from 2023 and 2019. In 2023, they said they were zoning to the south, but Atiku threw his hat into the ring in the primary, and that upset the whole can of worms. That just scattered and destabilized the whole thing, because that was what gave Wiki and them the impetus to leave and go and form that G5. They didn't leave, but they formed the G5, which worked for President Bola Tinubu, because they claimed that they had all agreed that they would have a southern candidate, and the fact that Atiku was now carrying the party flag runs counter to everything they believe in. So they more or less didn't support their own party's candidate and supported the opposition, which played a major role in why the PDP lost. And I also remember now that maybe not 2019, but 2015, the PDP also made a fatal error at that time, because they asked Goodluck Jonathan not to throw his hat in the ring, that they should allow the North to finish their 8 years, because if you remember, Yaradua passed away during his first term. Goodluck finished that term. 2015, they didn't want him. They wanted a northerner to finish the next 4 years, and then Goodluck could now come in after that as the southern for the South 8 years. But Goodluck insisted on running in 2015, and we saw the outcome of that and what eventually transpired. So the PDP is trying to learn its lesson and say, well, right now, the whole country accepts that the North has done 8 years. The South is now doing its own 8 years. And for them to have the best chance to unseat the incumbent, they have to bring a southerner. And if they bring a northerner, the same thing that happened in the last election will happen. They will lose a good proportion of the electorate who will say, well, it's still the South turn now. What is the northerner doing here? So by zoning to the South, they are trying to cultivate that proportion of voters who believe in this balancing between North and South, and seeing to it that they conform the things that hurt them in the past. They don't make those same mistakes again. So the question is, even though they have zoned it to the South, will they be able to keep it that way? The last couple of outings, they weren't able to. So we wish them luck. We'll see what happens.
Taking into consideration that NEC has actually never resolved to zoning before, what political pressure do you think the PDP might currently be facing for them to, have insisted on zoning to the South?
Well, you see, the thing about it is that it's an unwritten rule. It's not constitutional. It's a gentleman's rule. And you are not compelled to adhere to it if it doesn't suit you, because it's not necessarily constitutional. Even the parties may not even have it in their constitution. It's just a gentleman's agreement. And the reason for it is it's supposed to foster unity. It's supposed to, kind of cover up our differences and our diversity. It's supposed to give everybody a sense of inclusiveness. That, okay, the North has had it this time, so let the South have it this time, and let it rotate like that, so that all parts of the country get a feeling of belonging. But if you go beyond that and you look at it on a micro level, I say, okay, so how about the Southeast in Nigeria that has never ruled this country since we came back to democracy in 1999? So if we are zoning, suppose we now start to micro zone, and you now say, okay, well, since it's north-south, southwest has had it twice now. President Obasanjo did it, President Tinubu is doing it. Southeast has never done it, at least in the north. I think they've had north central and they've had northwest. At least two of the zones in the north have participated. In the south, we've had south-south, good luck. We've had southwest, Obasanjo and Tinubu, but Southeast has never been represented. So what I'm trying to say essentially is that by the time you start looking at this zoning, you can make a case for why you should micro all the way to infinity, you know. So there's always somebody who can claim marginalization, no matter how well you zone. So you say north south, is that too broad? Should we break it down further and say, okay, north central, northwest, northeast, south south, southwest, southeast? So we now have 6. Do we now rotate between the 6? If we now start rotating between the 6, southwest, we now say, but wait, Ogun State has done it twice. Lagos State has done it once. Then the states within the zone too begin to complain. Do you understand? Then even within the state too, you have, okay, Ogun State, for example, you have the Ijebu side, you have the Egba side. So that's the problem with when you start assigning quotas and you know, preferences and affirmative action, so to speak, to level the playing field, is that sometimes in the process of trying to balance things, you actually unbalance things. So maybe things should just run their course. I'm looking for a time when our democracy will mature to the point where we pick people not based on sentiments of religion, ethnicity, zone, but pure competence. That everybody who is presenting themselves for office, they will just look at their ability to make our lives better. Because at the end of the day, that's what governance is supposed to be all about, is that what's in it for me, the voter? What do I get out of it? I'm not talking of stomach infrastructure or dividends of democracy, these throwaway terms that we used to do. I mean, substantive benefits, you know, the indices of development, things like infant mortality, life expectancy. The life expectancy of a male in Nigeria today is 57 years old. 57. That's the average for a male in Nigeria. You're gone. So I'm looking at who is the person who's going to improve that, you know, by better health care, better nutrition, lower prices, better air to breathe, fresh air, pollution alone from all our diesel generators. I'm sure if they could look at the lungs, if they could take pictures of the lungs of most Nigerians, you find it is highly toxified because of all the pollution we're breathing in just from diesel fumes. So why don't we wait and find a presidential candidate who will say, I guarantee if I do 2 terms, there will be no one single diesel generator in Nigeria again because I'll solve the power problem. So such a president is somebody who's already making my health better. Do you understand? So I'm hoping that Nigeria gets to a point where we can leave these primordial sentiments behind and just deal with people on the level of what they can do to improve our lives. We'll get there someday. We're not there yet.
Do you think the decision will help heal the rift between the Makinde's camp and Wike camp, or do you think it will deepen this political crisis they seem to, or tension they seem to be having at PDP?
My sense is both of them have presidential ambitions. So now that they've zoned it to the south, then the two of them game on. I mean, I don't think it should be an issue of enmity. I think it should be an issue of competitive spirit. That, okay, so let's both throw our hats in the ring and may the best man win. So I know there's been a lot of wrangling in terms of Damagum has one person's support, Anyanwu, the secretary, has another person's support. Wike was not in favor of the convention that they are calling in November. He said he was not aware of it. He was not happy with the meeting they did in Lagos. So there have been a lot of wranglings. The issue is Makinde and Wike seem to be the two strongest formidable power structures within the PDP now, at least from the south. And now that the momentum is shifting to the south, it's in their own area of, it's in their own area where they function. It's in their own space. That's where the momentum has shifted to. So this could intensify the competition between the two of them. It could intensify it, but I don't think it will be in a rancorous kind of way where they'll be abusing each other publicly and all. Because let's remember, and that's why I was a bit dubious in the beginning when they said they had issues. Let's remember that they were part of this G5 in 2023. They collectively joined together to undermine Atiku's candidacy, right, and boost President Bola Tinubu. So they worked together in that regard against their own party. So I had a difficult time understanding what could now have come to split them up. And of course, the only thing that could cause that is if they're both angling for the same position in 2027. So, but I don't think the discord between them rises to the level of where it can make them disaffected completely to where they turn their backs on each other and they implode the party in the middle of their fight. What I was expecting to see and hear yesterday at the PDP convention, maybe I have to go talk about that didn't come out at the PDP NEC meeting, was sanctioning Wike for anti-party activities. They have set up a committee headed by Diri, the governor of Bayelsa, and that committee's job was to review the activities of various people that have been working against the party and recommend steps to be taken. They're a disciplinary committee and they were supposed to recommend steps. I was waiting to see that they would say suspend Wike from the party, fine him, expel him. I was waiting. It didn't happen, which still goes to show that the PDP does not have the will or the courage to stand up to Wike, which lets me know that what does that say? At the end of the day, Wike may still have his way in that party if care is not taken.
So there have been mentions of people attributing the zoning of PDP presidency to the south to favor the sitting president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, knowing fully well that the people clamoring for these are people that have thrown their back and their support for President Bola Tinubu. Do you agree with that?
I don't trust anybody in politics. Anything is possible. All this could be even El Rufai that's talking against President Tinubu, even Kayode Fayemi that's talking. It won't surprise me if 2027 comes and you see them all in the same camp again, because that's politics. So if you should take what they say at face value. I mean, it's not what you can really take to the bank and gamble your family farm. That what they are saying is gospel. So I look at it and my thinking is that Makinde worked for President Tinubu in 2023. Wike is working for him now, literally, and has said openly, publicly, I am supporting President Tinubu for 2027. So, if either Makinde or Wike use their influence to zone the thing to the south, maybe their thinking is that, well, there's no prominent enough southerner now who can stand up to President Tinubu anyway and win. Right? The political calculus, that if anybody's going to beat President Tinubu now, it may be Peter Obi, but Peter Obi does not have on his own what it would take, even including the obedience vote, he does not seem to have what it would take to win alone. He needs some sort of collaboration to join up with him to now try to unseat President Tinubu. So, Seyi Makinde, Wike, the PDP, these could all just be posturing on their part, knowing that by zoning it to the south, whoever is going to come from the south is going to be weak. And that will make it easy, or it's going to be weaker than President Tinubu. So it's going to make it easy for the president. They may have struck a backroom deal, for all you know. Maybe they've had nocturnal meetings with the president and said, don't worry, we'll deliver the PDP votes to you in 2027. We'll just go about it in a circuitous route that won't be readily apparent to the media and to the public. So I wouldn't put it past them, but I guess we will know when we see who emerges as the PDP's flag bearer. If neither Makinde nor Wike come up and is some nondescript, very marginal politician that we've never heard of, then we know that it's a setup. It's a setup to just allow President Tinubu to run away with it, with at least with the votes of those who still believe that it's a southerner who should have the next 6 years. We've done 2 now. A southerner should have the next 6 years. And so if President Tinubu is the best contender, then I think it'll be easier for him to win.
So does this zoning strategy position PDP effectively for 2027? Or will you consider it a stoppage?
Well, I think it can swing both ways, because first of all, the northern votes matter. As you can see in the APC, that it was when Buhari, in spite of all his votes, joined with with President Tinubu to form the ACN back in 2015. The ACN, NNPP, Buhari's CPC, and so they came to form APC. That was when it was that coalition that was able to deliver the country. And ever since then, if you look, It's been a marriage. So even in 2023, President Tinubu scored well in the north. He scored very well in the north, although he did better in the southwest. There was one zone in the north where he got more votes. I think that's where Kano and Katsina are the two big states in the north in terms of population. His votes there were more than what he got in the southwest. So you need the north and you need the south, as we've seen. You need both. So the question becomes, if the south the PDP presents somebody from the south, what will happen to those 12 million votes that President Buhari had from the north? So that's why you may see that the ADC may pick a northern candidate so that it counterbalances against the southern candidates, and they'll be taking the risk that people may not care about the 8-year north-south rotation. After all, they will say the north didn't get its 8 years when Yaradua died. So why should we be beholden to this notion of it must be 8 years by force? So those northern votes, ADC, they look at those 12 northern votes and say, let's give Atiku a run. And Atiku has declared that he's running. He has declared, although he said he will support whoever emerges from the primary of the ADC. But that lets me know that he's going to work to get that ticket in the ADC. So you might look at it and say, just like Muslim ticket didn't matter at the end of the day, despite the fact that a lot of people made noise about it. At the end of the day, the Muslim ticket still prevailed. So how do we know that a northern ticket in the middle of the South's 4 years, that enough people will say it doesn't matter? Just like they said, Muslim doesn't matter. Enough people may say it doesn't matter if the North comes back after only 4 years after being 8 years. Do you understand? So it's all about strategy. They have to be strategic in their thinking, both parties. They have to look and see who is doing what. So I think the PDP and the ADC will take a pause and see what the APC does. Of course, we know the APC will present President Bola Tinubu for re-election. But there are so many other things that go along with that, including the party chairmanship of the APC and all these other things. So I think the other parties will take a look at what the APC is doing, how the APC is strategizing towards 2027, and that will dictate or drive how they set themselves up for that.
I'll look into a second story. President Bola Tinubu met President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva of Brazil, aiming to rejuvenate Nigeria-Brazil bilateral relations across multiple sectors. The significant agreement is to include agriculture and food security, where Nigeria and Brazil signed the $1 billion deal to provide mechanized farming equipment, training, and agricultural service centers. Defense cooperation as well. A defense agreement was struck during the Nigeria-Brazil strategic dialogue, reinforcing security collaboration. How important is President Bola Ahmed's visit to Brazil, in rejuvenating the Nigerian-Brazil bilateral relations?
Well, he scored quite a number of successes. So I think this is a successful trip. I think some of the things they signed, especially, as you said, relating to agriculture, relating to defense, relating to energy, I think they're good things relating to defense, especially now that we're suffering insecurity. Wherever we can get help from, we should take help. And Brazil is actually a formidable country in terms of its economy, in terms of its tech, in terms of healthcare. The part that makes me really happy is the agri aspect, because food security should be number one. Although I also am a firm believer of the fact that we need homegrown solutions, that we should cultivate more of our own agri. But if people can help us to get there, like mechanized farming, provide the mechanization, provide irrigation, the components for irrigation, provide maybe fertilizer and seedlings and various things that can help us to gain momentum in achieving our own food security. Any kind of help is good, but we should not lose sight of the ultimate goal, which should be that we need to be able to feed our own selves. So anything we are doing in terms of signing agreements with different places should be geared towards making us independently capable of feeding ourselves, whatever. We have vast arable land in this country. We have enough herds of cow. Brazil is very big on beef, as I was telling you before we started the show. Very, very big. It's one of the world's largest exporter of beef. But their heads of cattle, can they compare to the amount of cattle we have in Nigeria or in West Africa? The problem is organization. The problem is discipline. The problem is administration. When we are still having farmer-herder clashes, that obviously will affect the beef value chain down the road in terms of supply, in terms of breeding, in terms of even volume, because in the midst of herder farmer clashes, cows are being killed as well, not just human beings. So if we can solve that problem, we can not only provide enough beef for us, but we too can become a net exporter of beef like Brazil. So that's where I want to see us going. These agreements are good. Another one that I was happy about was this BASA agreement that was signed that allows direct flights between Brazil and Nigeria. And APC is already saying they will start a direct flight service between Brazil and Nigeria, which means we can get 7 hours. You can travel from one to the next. Unlike right now, you have to connect through America or through Europe.
Over
and it
13
takes
hours.
24 hours. Easy 24 hours. So I'm happy about that BASA agreement that they've signed, and also the issue of insecurity, that they will work with us on defense, because Brazil is an industrialized nation. The country builds planes. It has its own, after Boeing and Airbus, Embraer, that is their homemade plane. It's the third most popular commercial aviation jet in the world. So they are an fully industrialized nation. My only worry about this flirtation with Brazil is that America does not want any of us talking to any BRICS country. You know that BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
Definitely.
We seem to be moving closer and closer to BRICS and away from, Western Europe, from American influence. And Trump has threatened. So after yesterday's visit, it won't surprise me if not only do we get more visa restrictions from America, but we will also probably get higher tariffs as well that will impact us in the short run. But nonetheless, this administration has taken a bet that Brazil is one of the countries that can do us well to partner with, and they're moving forward with it, and I wish us all the best.
So how transformative can mechanized farming equipment and training be for Nigeria, especially looking at the fact that we practice subsistence farming?
Yeah, most of our farmers today grow just enough for themselves to eat, and perhaps their immediate neighbors, where they do swaps. In terms of the type of commercial level farming, wide-scale commercial farming is not as prevalent. Of the hundreds of thousands and even millions of farmers in this country, the larger percentage of them are subsistence farmers, as you rightly identify. But once mechanization comes in, I mean, we should be long past the days where we're still using hoe to till the ground, and where we're still using machetes and cutlasses to clear land, when machines can do this in a fraction of the time. Back in the day of my grandfather was a farmer. The reason I found out that most of those men in my grandfather's time married multiple wives was so that we could have many children who work on the farm. It was for a supply of laborers, was why they procreated so massively, and why they engaged primarily in polygamy. It was to have a ready workforce of people ready to do back-breaking labor. Do you understand? But in this day and age, we have machines. What 50 men, it will take them a whole day today, a machine can do in an hour. So we cannot under-talk the value of mechanization in farming. The problem for me with Nigeria is that we don't have a maintenance culture. So they bring all these machines here, whoop-de-doo-de-doo, we inaugurate them, cut ribbon, they're all looking shiny and nice and glossy. Go and look after 1 year. You will cry. There's rust, they are broken down, no spare parts, they can't maintain them, all kinds of stuff. So the notion of mechanization is good, but are we really ready? Do we have all the support systems in place that will enable it to run seamlessly, run efficiently, and sustainably? Not that after 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, we will now start seeing broken down elements. And you see it everywhere. I look at the BRT buses in Lagos that were inaugurated by Governor Ambo. They were scant 6-7 years ago. I think they were inaugurated by Fashola. Yeah, but Ambo, they did one term. So maximum 8 years ago they were inaugurated. You should see them today. They are dilapidated, they are bashed, they are dirty, they are breaking down everywhere. And the examples are replete everywhere where you see anything that starts out good that has to do with mechanization or technology. So we need to imbibe a spirit of maintenance before. We shouldn't be reactive when they're broken down already, then start trying to find solutions of how to fix them. We should build into the system now from the beginning, how we'll be able to keep these things running and keep them effective in helping us mechanize our farming to where it'll be beneficial to all of us.
So what practical outcomes should we expect from the defense, agreement that has been made between Nigeria and Brazil?
Well, I talked about their aviation sector. So obviously, if they're making commercial planes, they probably got fighter jets as well. So I won't be surprised if it's more of technology transfer. I don't expect Brazil to bring boots on the ground to come and fight Boko Haram. I'm not expecting that. But I'm sure technology transfer is some of what they must have discussed, which could include things like fighter jets. It could include drones. It could include weaponry, tanks, armored personnel carriers, munitions, all that kind of stuff. It could include probably intelligence devices, things you can use to eavesdrop, things you can use to sweep the internet for chatter in terms of terrorism conversations. You can track terrorism conversations. There's probably listening devices that you can use to tap telephones that they can probably supply. So I think it'll be more of technology transfer. And I don't expect that we Nigerians are notoriously impatient. We want to see results tomorrow. Something like this, it has to take time to set up and take time to start becoming effective. So let's give it a little bit of time to get up and running and begin to have an impact before we start complaining.
So how does this deal align with Nigeria's ambition to become a $1 trillion economy by 2030?
Well, a lot more of what I see from this Brazilian trip has to do with more of what we will benefit as people and as individuals, as opposed to, I don't think this really is geared towards growing our economy per se, because you look at it and you say, well, maybe indirectly, because if they help us with insecurity and we're able to douse insecurity, then farmers can go to the farm, workers can go to work, so we are more productive, we will produce more, our GDP will increase. So indirectly, perhaps there are benefits. But by and large, if you look at the areas that are being talked about, things like energy, things like insecurity, things like farming, these are all things that should benefit us directly. Then after we have benefited from them, then they can start to have collateral effects on boosting the economy. Now, Nigeria wants to have a $1 trillion economy by trillion dollar by 2030. It's not impossible. And I already see upticks in some of our economic indices. I mean, things like our foreign reserve is up. We've paid our outstanding debt, that our dollar debt in terms of loans, we've paid quite a bit of it off. Inflation is holding steady. You look at various aspects of what makes the economy, and the naira is quite stable now, even though it's a bit still too high, it's stable. I mean, it's a bit too low, but it's stable. So there is hope for stability, but stability does not immediately yield on the ground benefits. So what government needs to do is translate the economic stability into the well-being of the man on the street. That is a much harder thing to do. That's why you're seeing all these reports, glowing reports about, oh, the economy is doing this, the economy is doing that, the economy is that. But people are still crying that they're hungry. So it looks like there's a disconnect somewhere. Who is lying? Is the government lying about these rosy numbers, or is the man in the street lying that he's hungry? Well, the two are possible. They can coexist, where the economy is stable, but there's still massive hunger. And that's what's happening. So government needs to begin to translate some of those rosy numbers into tangible, real benefits for the average Nigerian. Economy, they're saying that, well, that we're pumping more oil. Now we are when President Tinubu came in, we were just slightly over 1 million. Now we're about 1.5, 1.6. They're projecting that by next year we'll be at 2 million. By 20, whatever, we'll be at 2.5 million. The more oil we pump, the more our economy grows. And we have the service sector that's also doing wonderful things. So I don't think it's impossible to have a $1 trillion economy by 2030. I don't think it's impossible. It's not easy, but it's not impossible. A lot of things have to align. A lot of elements have to align in place for that to happen. But I think it's possible.
So what needs to be tackled in order to maximize the impact of this agreement that we just had?
I think only the man upstairs can come down and answer that question because there are no assurances of anything. You just do and you hope for the best, you know. Well, one thing is, when you sign bilateral agreements, you want to keep up your own side of the bargain. So whatever Nigeria is, because it can't be that Brazil is just one promising to do everything for us. What do they get in return from us? You know? So we have to keep up our own side of the bargain. You know, we have to, whatever we're promising to give in exchange for what they're giving us. If they're loaning us money, we should pay back as and when due. If they are giving us direct flights and we are giving them direct flights, we should not have people who are overstaying their visa and annoying the Brazilian authorities. You understand what I'm saying? We should make sure that the jets that they send or they sell to us, you know, we use them the way we promised to use them in the agreement. Like, look, when America sold us Super Tucanos, they put certain conditions that you can't use them to bomb areas where there are women and children. You can't, which hampered our ability to use those. Yeah, you might notice that you haven't heard much about Super Tucanos since they came here. The conditions that were attached to this were so stringent that it nullified the usefulness of the jet. But nonetheless, to answer your question, well, let's both keep up our own sides of the bargain. Whatever we agree to give them, let's keep to it. And I'm sure that they will keep up their own end of the bargain, and we hope for the best.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure always.
Dayo Akintobi, publisher, Ikeja GRA Today, Lekki Today, and Ilupeju Today. Thank you very much for staying with us today. Remember, you can follow us on all our social media platforms as seen on your screen and on our website at www.vanguardngr.com.